Well, hey, welcome and thank you so much for joining us. Can you believe that we're already like 3 weeks into January?
No, it's crazy.
It's about that time when attendance at the gym starts to decline after being packed for a couple of weeks following the new year, right? Fast food sales may have took a bit of a hit, but it's probably rebounding nicely right about now. And millions are moving past that resolution excitement and kind of getting back into the old routine.
Yeah.
Right?
So true.
Yeah, it's true. And there's a lot of data out there about the whole New Year's resolution thing. And of course, lots of teasing and joking too. But that's kind of a bummer, actually, because what that really represents is the abandoning of what's probably some really good dreams and hopes.
Yeah, good intentions.
Yeah, that's kind of sad to me. Now, we really don't want that for you. And that's why toward the end of today's episode, we've got a brand new special way that you can join us, not only to make a difference for your blended family, which it will, but also invest in other blended families who need support and encouragement just like you. Welcome to the Blended Family Coaching Show, where you'll discover how to move your step family from just surviving to truly thriving.
Grab your headphones and listen in as we share practical, real-life strategies for building healthy bonds,
Understanding the kids' perspective,
romance and partnership,
parenting with great teamwork.
and yes, even co-parenting with a difficult ex.
We're Mike and Kim Anderson, and we believe with the right tools, every step couple can overcome the common challenges of step family life.
Join us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations to discover how you can lead your family with confidence and create the future you really want. All right, let's dive into today's episode topic, which has been inspired by one of our listeners, and it's all about bonding and blending tips for step siblings and just helping them to connect. So we're going to unpack a lot of this today, and we're going to explore two big topics around this. Now, the first one is accurately assessing each child's unique dynamics, looking at it from their perspective rather than yours.
Yeah, that can be hard.
And then we're going to talk about things that you can do with that assessment. We've got to understand what's going on first. And then the other topic we're going to dive into is that challenge of favoritism in the home. And this is the number one thing that can really cause dissension. And so we're going to tackle it, talking about the number one thing that we can do to avoid favoritism in the home. But first, let's talk about this assessing your unique dynamics from your kids' perspectives. Now, for some kids, step siblings will be happily accepted. Sometimes they're excited, especially younger kids. Might be excited to have, an older sister that they always wanted. Or
it could be a novelty.
A little younger brother that they never had. But for others, new step siblings actually represent another loss for them. Now, it could be loss of personal space and privacy. That can be a reality. It could be loss of time and attention from their bio parent, or even loss of birth order or identity in the family. It can really shake some kids up. We worked with a couple who the husband had I think she was around 9 or 10-year-old daughter. And he had been a single dad for several years, and this daughter was daddy's little girl. They were very connected. They had a tight bond. She was the youngest, and she loved being daddy's little girl and having his full attention. Well, then he fell in love and married his wife, who came along with some stepkids. And one of these stepkids happened to be quite young.
Yeah.
It was a little girl with some special needs. And so he had to divert a lot of his time and attention towards caring for this younger child. And his bio daughter really had a tough time with that. She was no longer daddy's little girl. She was no longer the youngest of the family. And she really started acting out in some destructive ways towards the step sibling and the stepmother.
Yeah, it's amazing how some of those different dynamics, like you just said, birth order, which is really what you described there, can really impact this.
Yeah.
And there's lots of things that can impact it. And it's interesting because we talk a lot about, we've talked about the stranded stranger and the trapped teammate before, which is really about us as adults And it's this feeling, we've kind of adopted that, developed that out of one expert's thoughts around what she calls an insider and an outsider.
Yeah.
And, sometimes we feel stuck on the inside, sometimes we're stuck on the outside. And just like we experience that as a couple, our kids can naturally experience some of that as well, just depending on how the different biological connections are set up in the home. Most kids have a certain sense of connection to a half or a full sibling, but often they don't really feel that connected to a step sibling, especially in the early stages.
It's very different.
And, sometimes that, when that isn't, kind of addressed, then it can go to an extreme where we can create coalitions. Steps, different sets of siblings can create kind of different biological camps. And some will be insiders and they'll maybe shun the outsiders, and it builds up jealousy, sometimes hostility and resentment. And it can be really challenging because the more that sets in, the more they want to disconnect. And what we want for them is to connect, right?
Yeah, we don't want to get to these extreme circumstances. That's why this is such an important topic today.
And one of the common things that we hear is an imbalance of visitation in the home. So like one set of kids might be there only every other weekend. So they're only there a few days a month, but the other set of kids is actually there almost full time, if not completely full time.
Right, or maybe they're just gone a week or two in the summer visiting their other parent.
And that can really exacerbate this insider-outsider dynamic that kids can be feeling. And kids that, kind of are in that schedule of only being there every other weekend might feel like outsiders because they just simply spend less time in the home. And other kids who, kind of have been established in the home and they're there more full time. And then that visiting, the visitation happens of those other kids come in. That can feel really intrusive, sometimes very overwhelming, especially when you consider some of those other dynamics Kim just talked about, birth order, age, and all those other things. And, even just the house that we live in can actually create a challenge here. If the family's residing in the original home of those insider kids that are there all the time, now they've got to share space with these space invaders, right? Or maybe the family is living in the house that the outsider kids, the kids who are there less time, is in their original home, and these insider kids are just like taking over.
Yeah, they're there all the time. That can be really
challenging. So you can see really quickly how kids can get locked into that insider-outsider dynamic and all the variety of different things, noticed and unnoticed, that actually contributes to it.
Yeah, and some things that you may have noticed is this shift in how some of the kids in your home might be behaving towards you or towards each other, or just in general. You might notice when all of the kids are together, there's different attitudes happening, or maybe kids are withdrawing.
So when a child who's been away or a set of kids who's been away come into the home, there's a sudden shift. That's what you're saying?
Yeah. You may have noticed different behaviors. Sometimes they can become really possessive of their bio parent, or uncharacteristically needy, more needy than usual. Or maybe you sense there's just a different vibe in the home when certain combinations of kids are present. Things just shift and change. Maybe it feels like people are walking around on eggshells, or high tensions, or they seem more guarded. So these are just things to notice, and they could be indicators that there's this insider-outsider struggle going on. These tensions between the step siblings. And this can create a lot of challenges around bonding. It can sabotage the bonding process in a blended family.
And this is a really hard thing to talk about sometimes. It was just a few days ago, actually, I think I was chatting with a stepmom who was having a hard time figuring out how she was going to talk to her husband about the dread she feels when the kids come over, because there's that sudden shift that's happening. And so I just had an opportunity to help her figure out how to approach that with her husband. in a way that was constructive. But this is a hard topic to talk about.
Yeah, because sometimes we jump to conclusions that, oh, they don't like my kids.
Yeah, and that's
or
not
they
it
don't
at all.
want my kids here.
Yeah.
But it's just that you're noticing there's something going on that's not healthy.
Yeah.
And so we're going to help you with that today. We're going to talk about some strategies that everyone can really apply to their home to kind of ease this insider-outsider dynamic.
For the kids.
Yeah. And honestly, as the adults, it's up to us. It's on our shoulders to create this environment that will reduce the insider-outsider tension. And we need to strategically consider how we can open up new opportunities for bonding to naturally happen.
Yeah, that's so important because you know what? We're not going to be able to create a relationship.
No.
But I love the way Kim just said that we're going to create an environment that's going to allow that relationship to happen.
Yeah.
And so we can do some real intentional things about that.
Yeah, but
and we're going to talk about that.
It is up to us. Your kids aren't
That's
going to
right.
create that for themselves,
No,
I
they
guarantee you.
That's right. So let's dive into some ways, some of these strategies. First of all, we want to be able to make sure that each child has a space of their own, even if it's really small.
Yeah, so
some
important.
kids, again, we've got maybe 2 sets of kids and one set's only there a few days a month. Well, they still need their space. They need to know which dresser drawer is theirs. They need to know what area of the bathroom counter is theirs. They maybe need to know what wall of the bedroom is theirs to put posters on, or if you're brave enough, let them choose the color for painting. But something that they feel ownership of, because if they don't feel ownership of anything within the home, then they're not going to feel like they belong.
Yeah.
Right? And we've got to also do that in a way that still honors the insider kids or the kids that might be around there much as possible, right? We don't want to intrude on them. So we've got to start to put some clear boundaries and understanding around space. And we might have to get creative about that.
Yeah,
Sometimes
really
we have to
creative.
make sacrifices to accommodate the needs of kids, even the ones who aren't there very often. We know one couple who actually turned their garage into another bedroom, which was awesome, just to create some more space. I mentioned painting a wall. You might have to have a bedroom that has 2 totally different colors that do not mix because we're just giving some ownership to the kids.
You really want the child to come for visitation and have a place where it's,
I belong
this is
here.
mine.
Yeah.
This is my space. And we made a sacrifice similar to this, honey, when we were house hunting. We purposely, one of our criteria was we've got to have a 4-bedroom house. And from the outside, it would make sense. Oh, just let the girls share a room. You don't need the full 4 bedrooms. Let the girls share a room. But we really wanted Annika to have her own space.
True.
Apart from the younger kids. She needed that. And so the sacrifice we made was we have a tiny kitchen.
Yeah, that's true.
The house next...
I call it the all-access kitchen. You can stand right in the center and turn any direction and reach anything you need.
The house next door is a 3-bedroom. And they have a huge, gigantic kitchen.
I know,
and
it's
I go
beautiful,
over there,
yeah.
I'm like, look at this kitchen. But we sacrificed some other living space so that we could have 4 bedrooms because we wanted
really good.
all 3 kids to have their own space. So those are some things to think about. How can you give each child their own private space or some say, some ownership?
And that's just to clarify, that's our story. And there's
Everyone's
unique
different.
dynamics around that. We're not saying that every child needs to have their own room. In our dynamics, that was important to
Right.
us.
We've also heard of kids sharing rooms and putting
Like a curtain or something.
some division space so that each child has some privacy, and that can work out well too.
We're so excited to let you know about something brand new we've created just for you.
We've realized that with so many episodes available here on the show, it might feel a bit overwhelming to find the topics that matter most to you. That's why we've created a simple tool for you to receive a personalized playlist focused on your current struggle or your biggest challenge.
That's right. It's called the Blended Family Breakthrough Quiz. You'll answer just a few questions, and based on your responses, we'll email you a curated custom playlist of episodes that are specific to you.
This simple quiz will direct you to the most impactful episodes that pertain to you personally and keep you on track in your journey of discovery, learning, and growth. So scroll all the way to the bottom of the show notes for this episode and click the link to take the Blended Family Breakthrough Quiz today.
Okay, let's get back to the discussion. All right, let's keep going.
All right, so we also need to set up some practical boundaries that respect both sets of kids. This is really important because those insider kids, the ones that are there more, they need to maintain continuity in their home. And the outsider kids need some say around just the daily household functions of the home, like what TV programs are we watching, what food options are available, the use of the shared space and family activities. There's all kinds of decisions made every day. Both sets of kids need to have some say.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a balancing act there. Mm-hmm. And also, so we've got giving each child their own space. We're putting some clear boundaries around how our kids are contributing to the decisions within our home, is what Kim was just talking about. And we need to set some clear boundaries around privacy and a commitment to respect personal belongings of each child.
That's a big one.
Right. And that's especially critical when a child is absent during that time. And, you know, if we've got one step sibling playing with the toys, or maybe a really expensive electronic device, or borrowing clothes from a step sibling who is absent, that feels like a real betrayal when that child comes home. Their area of the bedroom maybe got cluttered up or messed up or
ransacked.
We don't want children coming home feeling as though they've been betrayed, because not simply because we don't want to deal with the argument that ensues, but most importantly because we want to protect the possibility of that step-sibling relationship to grow in respect and honoring each other. So we really need to have some clear boundaries with kids about what it looks like to respect the belongings of their step-siblings, even when their step-siblings aren't around.
Yeah. So what we're really asking you to do here is to put yourself into each of your child's shoes and just spend some time imagining what it's like for them, coming back and forth, and what are they experiencing? And then you want to identify, are there any situations in our home where feelings of intrusion or resentment might be happening or even have the potential to happen? And once you've identified some of those things, then spend some time brainstorming together how you can address these issues before they escalate, before they cause problems in the step relationships. You can be proactive here.
That's right. Now, we've talked a lot about possessions and space and things that kids really feel ownership of. And there's another thing that they really feel like they own. And that's you. That's my mom. That's my dad, right? And so one of the ways that we can actually help our step kids to connect with each other, our step kids and our bio kids, I'm really messing this up, the step siblings to connect with each other, is to be very aware of the one-on-one time that we as bio parents each have with our individual kids. And here's the thing. When kids get that one-on-one attention from us, it helps them to feel stable and secure. And it actually helps to ease some of the overall family tension. And that's something that can really create an opportunity for them to connect with those step siblings that you really want them to connect with.
And they don't feel like they have to compete for your attention.
That's right. And so we're not going to go real deep into that right now because we talked more about it back in episode 3. So if you want to think a little bit more about your one-on-one time with bio kids and dig a little deeper, then head back to episode 3 and we'll link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, and that's all about balancing time because it can be challenging. The other thing we want to talk about is establishing healthy boundaries for safe and respectful behavior. This is so important. This is absolutely not the time to kind of, let's just let the kids work it out for themselves.
Let them fight it out, right? If there's no blood, we're okay.
No,
that's not good.
This is not where we want to go. We really need to protect all the kids by setting some clear and respectful boundaries around behavior. And we hear about this all the time. We just heard about this the other day, how when his kids come for the visit, they bully her kids, and that can create a lot of tension. So parents, we need to step up and we need to closely monitor what's going on with the kids and then calmly enforce the expectations. And that's the bio parent's job.
That's right. Yeah, we can't back out of that.
No.
We've got to insert ourselves right into it to help them solve that problem. What we're really after is requiring kids to be civil and decent to each other, especially in the early years, because there isn't a real relationship built just yet.
It doesn't exist.
In fact, your relationship as a couple is several, probably years beyond where the step siblings relationship is. Yeah. So we can't ask them to love or even like each other. But if that's where you want to get in the long run, then what it really starts with is just learning to be civil and decent to each other. So remember all this through that lens of, hey, we're requiring civility here. Okay?
Yeah, just like you wouldn't allow them to bully a neighbor child or a child on the bus or a child in school, you're not going to allow them to bully or treat a step sibling poorly. So the other thing we want to do is really be aware of how can we help step siblings to connect or disconnect.
Yeah, that's a key right there.
You know, we've got to realize some relationships will grow close and develop a natural connection. Others are going to add stress and more challenges for your kids. So it's okay for kids to maintain space from each other if they just don't hit it off. That's okay. The bottom line here is that slowing down speeds things up. And what I mean by that is that we really cannot push or pressure kids to accept each other.
But when we back off, slowing down speeds things up. When we back off and allow it to emerge over time, it actually goes a lot better, lot faster.
It does. It does. There's a young man that hangs out with our son. He's a friend, and his dad is getting ready to remarry and blend a family, and his dad's fiance has a son. So I asked this young man how he was feeling about all of this blending and how he felt about his new step sibling. And, you know, he was really honest with me about how he was feeling. And one of the things he said was that it really bothered him the way this step sibling,
who's a little bit younger.
A little bit younger, not much, but a little bit, just followed him around like a puppy dog everywhere he went and never gave him space. And he mentioned to me that he told his dad, you know, when we're living under the same roof in the same house, I really need to have my own room. I've got to have my own space. And his dad is like, yeah, I see why. I understand that. So sometimes it can be a real burden to have a step sibling invading your space. And if you want to learn more about the best way to blend in a family, in a blended family dynamic, we've got a great blog article that we're going to link to the show notes. It's called "What's the Best Way to Blend and Build Step Family Bonds?" And it's all about that slowing down speeds things up.
Yeah. Go check that out for sure. And, you know, I love the story that you just tell there because what that dad is modeling is an open dialogue with his son, right? Yeah. He's asking him to be honest. He's trying to find out how his son feels about that step sibling so that he can figure out how to respond in a respectful and a way that actually fills a need, right? And so we just want to encourage you as well, age appropriately, to find out what's going on underneath that. And that can be a challenging conversation because you may not hear what you want to hear. Yeah. But when you don't hear what you want to hear, that's actually an indicator that you're learning something and you can build some skills and some habits that are going to help you get where you really want to go. Yeah. So talk openly with your bio kids. Find out what they're really feeling about those step siblings. It
might mean that you need to put your own emotions and your own expectations aside and get really curious about what your children are experiencing so that you can respond.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we all want that, right? Aren't we supposed to just dive in and be one big, giant, happy family right off the bat?
It makes sense in theory. However, I'm going to share something. This is a direct quote from a step family expert. Her name is Laura Petherbridge. And I love what she says here. She starts out by saying, I know this one is going to be controversial. But when a husband and wife insist on saying, we have no steps in our home, everyone is the same, it can push a child further away. It does the opposite of what we want. She goes on to say, this is one of those things that sounds wise, loving, and harmonious, but it can trigger just the opposite. If the child doesn't feel that the step siblings are their brothers and sisters, it can cause tremendous pain and anger. When we force kids to view the step parent or step siblings as equal to their biological family, it becomes one more frustration over which they have no control.
Yeah.
It's much better to let those relationships move at their own pace and blossom over time. Let them morph into what comes naturally. Some step siblings become very close, some do not.
I love that. Let them morph into what comes naturally.
Yeah.
That's really good.
So when we go in with this attitude of we're a family now, it might be what you want or expect.
It probably is.
Yeah. But it is not your kid's reality in most cases.
Yeah.
So you need to be aware of the message that you're sending to the kids.
That's right. So we want to evaluate our unique dynamics based on our kids' perspective rather than ours. And then we want to go through some of these tips that we have for kind of reducing that insider-outsider feeling that different sets of kids can have so that we can create an environment for them to actually come together on their own in a natural way. Yeah. That's the job of
you're busting down the barriers. Yeah. That's what you're doing.
So you may need to back up on the podcast a little bit, go back and identify some of those tips and say, what are those top 2 or 3 that you want to focus on in your home right now? And that could be really helpful. Now, we said we were going to dive into another big topic, and we're going to kind of do a hard shift now and jump into that. And that's the area of favoritism. Sibling rivalry is a very easy thing to predict if parental favoritism is around.
Yep.
And unfortunately, step families, blended families are especially vulnerable to favoritism, or at least the feeling of favoritism from a child's perspective. Again, because of all those dynamics that we've already been talking about. And, love is really, it's an emotion that's going to grow over time. We can't force love in any step relationships. However, as the adults, figuring out how we're going to show favor with equity is a behavior that we can actually choose, right? So this is something within our control.
Yes.
And it's something that every parent and step parent really needs to pay attention to, because there's a lot of inadvertent ways we can fall into some traps here. We've got to do our best to be equitable with all the kids. They need to feel that equity. And I'm just going to throw this old saying out there, and it might challenge your thinking, but I've heard many, many times that fair isn't always equal. And sometimes when we don't have kids in the home at equal times and all of that, we can't make everything equal, but equal is different than equity. As a couple, we got to get really honest about how we might be inadvertently setting our family up for conflict if we fall into some favoritism traps. And if you want to go deeper on this subject, we don't have time to go through it all at a deep level today, but we've got a blog out there called How to Protect Your Stepfamily from Favoritism. And again, we're going to link to that in the show notes, and you can go read that on your own. But let's just talk a little bit about what are some of the favoritism traps that we actually can fall into inadvertently.
Yeah, and these come straight from stepfamily expert Ron Deal.
Yeah.
One of the traps that this easy wrong turn we can tend to make is around gift giving. Gift giving from us, and also gift giving from extended family members. Grandparents can be big culprits of this.
Yeah. Oh, I'm happy to give my grandchild a gift, but that other kid isn't my grandchild. Yeah, that can be really challenging.
All of these send messages of loyalty to kids. You again have to look at it from their perspective. The second trap that we can fall into is around how we prioritize our time. And we talked about the importance of those one-on-one bio relationships, spending one-on-one time in your bio with your bio kids. But we also need to be really intentional about spending time with the stepkids, with all the kids.
Yeah.
And investing in all the relationships. So how do we...
So I need to spend time with Annika too?
You do. Yes, of course.
I love spending time with Annika.
Especially if you've got a child that really loves quality time.
That's right.
The third trap we can fall into is all around chores and responsibilities. Okay? Sometimes we tend to burden some children more than others with responsibilities around the home. And when we're merging two homes, you know, you've been doing things a certain way and you have certain expectations for your kids, and the other parent may have different expectations around this. And then you come together and it's really easy for things to get out of balance there.
And that's a really tough one, especially when kids are there really part-time.
Yeah.
How do we give them responsibility even in the time where they're like, we don't want to pack their time with chores, but at the same time, we want to see equity in our family, and the kids are watching, and we want to make sure that there's some level of equity going on. Everybody's got to pull their weight.
Yeah, that's the message you want to send, is everyone pulls their weight, and learning to be responsible is a life skill.
That's right.
And then the fourth one, and you've probably already guessed, this is a tough one. It's all around how we discipline each set of kids. You know, if some kids are held to a certain expectation and others are given leniency, that can come across as a statement of loyalty to kids.
Yep.
And it really causes problems. And discipline and responsibility, these are two really big buzzwords for blended families.
Yes, for sure.
It can get really messy. And a lot of the challenges in a blended family home are rooted here around discipline and responsibility.
Yeah. And it's hard, you know, how do we actually go about bringing equity with all the kids? Which really lands us on one place where we are going to talk around these whole favoritism traps. Really in all of them, the key word to provide a home where we experience equity and the siblings can connect better because of it is when we're focused on consistency.
Across the board
with all the kids and really with ourselves in the home.
The whole household.
You know, when kids experience inconsistency around expectations or discipline or their shared space, whatever it is, then that inevitably creates some mixed messages for them. And it ultimately leads to resentment, some frustration. And a lot of times that resentment and frustration is pointed at a step sibling. Sometimes they don't even blame the parent or the step parent. They blame that other set of kids or that other kid on the other side of the fence, right? And for kids, it's really easy to go there, and it's just a hard thing for them to sort through emotionally. If they feel like they're being disciplined for things that either one, they didn't know that was an expectation, or two, they're being disciplined for something that another child in the home they perceive as not being disciplined for, now we've got inconsistency, and we've got to really guard our home and our hearts against that. Yeah. So, this is why consistency across the board is going to be the key word with all the kids. That's absolutely critical in helping us avoid those favoritism traps.
Yeah. And I think a big piece of this problem is that we aren't clear on what the expectations are.
Yeah,
we each come in with completely different expectations around what the behaviors are going to be and what the expectations around responsibility is going to be. And so, you know, I'm telling my kids one thing, you're telling your kids something else. And then the kids see all these mixed messages and how people are being treated differently.
Yeah. That's a breeding ground for favoritism.
Oh, yeah. Now, we've talked about enforcing specific boundaries so that you can protect all the kids and reduce potential problems. But we want to be really careful about this. We see this tendency in blended families to come along and, you know, identify, oh, we've got this problem, that problem, and now we're going to dole out lots and lots of new rules in order to maintain some order in our home. So there's this big, long list of new rules.
I love the list of rules.
But it's not helpful. What happens is it can cause a lot of resentment in the step relationships, exactly what we're trying to avoid. Because kids are looking at these new rules going, well, we never had to do this before.
That's right.
Now we have to do this because of them.
Yeah, that family.
Yeah,
great.
So that's going to create even more of a biological divide. The other problem with the big long list of rules is that it creates overwhelm for us, especially for the bio parent, right? We've got limited time with our kids. We don't want to spend every minute of it enforcing a bunch of rules. So we get super overwhelmed, because if you set an expectation and a rule and you don't follow through your rules mean nothing.
Yeah.
If you can't follow through. And if you're overwhelmed, you're going to have a hard time following through. Guarantee me, I've been there. That is not going to be helpful in giving that consistent message and consistent treatment with all the kids.
That's right. And, the key to working toward consistency around expectations for all the kids and consistency around the follow through around adults really centers on values rather than rules.
Yeah.
This has to be a process that kind of starts out slowly, and we're going to build it over time. And it's best when we can focus on what we want our values in the home to be. So let's just take an example using some of the things that we've already talked about, like maybe one child getting into a step sibling's stuff. Maybe they got after they grabbed their iPad and started using it when they weren't home. It's really easy to tempted to jump on that child and say, hey, you're not supposed to be playing with Johnny's iPad. Now go put that away. Don't do that.
The rule is.
That's all about the rules. But it might be more impactful if we approach that child with something like, hey, you know what? In our home, we really value respect. And that means that we respect each other's stuff. And we've got to ask before we use that iPad. Mm-hmm. What do you think that you're communicating about respect by taking Johnny's iPad without asking?
Yeah,
right.
It's more focused on the child's character rather than compliance.
Exactly. We're calling them up to live the values rather than jumping straight to punishment or discipline. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And we talk about this a lot. If you've been following us at all, we're all about identifying the values that you want to work towards.
Yeah. Maybe you're sick of hearing it from us.
We're going to keep talking about it, though, because it's just so important. Mm-hmm. Because the family values that become the expectations in your home really apply to everyone,
it's about
including the adults. Yeah. That's why we love it when we talk about favoritism, because you're not favoring anyone. It's across the board. Mm-hmm. And then when a child violates the value, let's say of respect, and takes something that doesn't belong to them, we can gently remind them about what respect means, the value of respect, and that it's a value we all live by in this house, rather than you broke a rule. Mm-hmm. See, the value of respect can be much more powerful than just another rule we have to follow.
Yeah. And part of the point here is not that we're advocating against discipline or consequences, but often we jump right to discipline and consequences, and we start there when the reality is where we really need to start is values. This is the why behind the what. Yeah. Why should I have to not touch Johnny's iPad? Yeah. Well, because we value respect.
Helping kids understand the value behind the value.
That's right.
And like Mike said, this is a process.
That's right. Yeah. So don't hear us wrong there. And you might be thinking, you know what? That all sounds wonderful, Mike and Kim. It sounds so great on this little
on this
podcast. But you might be going, okay, when the rubber meets the road, how do we actually make this happen? And we want to share a unique way that you can figure out how to do that.
We've got
an
answer for you.
Right.
We've worked it out for you.
Yeah, that's right. Now, remember at the beginning of the episode, we said we'd share a brand new opportunity for you to join us and make a difference in your family as well as other blended families just like you. So let's talk about how we can do that right now. We've had several people ask us over the last couple of years how they might be able to support our mission of reaching more couples and providing quality content, just like this podcast. And this is just one area where we provide content. And we are super excited to share that we now have a way to do that.
Yeah.
And it's mutually beneficial for you and for us and for other couples who need support. So we've partnered with a group called Patreon, where you can join us through monthly support that's going to do several things. Some simple stuff, like first, it's going to help keep this podcast ad free. Like we get enough ads thrown at us every day, right? You don't need to hear more. And you probably know that producing content and making it available isn't free to us. And so your support's going to help us continue to provide practical support and over time, even invest in making it better and reaching many more couples.
Really,
so
everyone wins.
That's a great thing. And like we said, we want to make this mutually beneficial. So we also set up some really special gifts that we have that's going to help you and your blended family in practical ways. We've got stuff like ebooks that are great gifts that come along with membership here. We even have a way that you can engage in one private coaching session every month directly with us, depending on this level that you give at. But our favorite one is for anyone who wants to join us at the level of only $10 a month.
Yeah.
We're giving full access to one of our online workshops called Step Families That Make It. It's really practical and it's foundational in helping you create that environment that's going to bring more connection and consistency, just like what we've been talking about all throughout this episode when you apply what you learn.
Yeah, that's why we created this workshop, just to do exactly what Mike just said, create that consistency, get on the same page as a team, and lead your family. So you're going to discover exactly how you can identify your family's most important values, the character traits, and the life skills you want to teach your kids, and how to implement them effectively without getting overwhelmed, right? We talked about that. And how to confidently hold those important boundaries with every family member.
Including each other.
That's right. You're not going to ask your kids to do anything that you're not already going to model, right? It's also going to help you decide a couple things as a couple. And these are really important things. Things like, what do you want relationships to look like in your blended family? And what kind of environment do you want to create in your home? What are the top priorities? What are the things we want to teach our kids? These are all important things, honestly, that every blended family couple needs to be having ongoing dialogue about. If you really want to reach what we call your desired destinations.
Yep, that future you really want. Oh. Nice sound effects.
Right. Your desired destinations are where you want to end up. So if you think, where do we want to be 5 years down the road, 10 years, 15 years down the road? What do we need to do now to get there? It doesn't just magically happen. We've got to take some intentional action, some forethought, some strategic planning if we want to get there. Believe me, we know.
Yeah, we've learned this the hard way.
Yeah, we tried to get there the hard way. There, this is much better. And that's why we want you to have access to this workshop, and we're giving it to you as a thank you gift when you choose to partner with us on Patreon, right? Everyone wins. Now, we've made it really easy by including a link in the show notes over on iTunes as well as on our website. But if you want to head over there right now, it's
www.patreon.com/Mike and Kim. You want me to take that for you?
I never know if it's a forward or a backslash.
It's a forward slash, yeah.
Okay, thanks,
so
honey.
It's Patreon, patreon.com/Mike and Kim.
There you go.
Now, you're going to discover a few additional benefits of joining the community over there on Patreon. There's some exclusive content there just for our partners, and you never know what's going to pop up over there.
We'll have some surprises.
That's right. And it's only for the community that's going to be within the Patreon community there. Now, we cannot wait to build a partnership with you, investing in your family, and have you be investing in other families along the way.
You get to be a part of what we're up to.
This is super exciting. I love it. All right. So this week, you're going to be doing a couple things. You're going to do an honest assessment of your unique dynamics from your kids' perspective, not your own.
Each one.
That's right. And you're going to implement some of those practical tips on minimizing their insider-outsider struggle. You're also going to consider what favoritism might be unintentionally invading your home, and then what kind of consistency is it that you need to create in order to combat that? All right. So those are some things you're going to do. You might check out the links to the blogs and other episodes that we have in the show notes, and go check out Patreon as well.
Go for it.
And then we're going to see you back here next week, where we're going to be sharing some ways that you can use that consistency when you're wrestling with those parenting decisions, because maybe the expectations in your kid's other home don't match the expectations in yours.
Or you have completely different values than that other home.
You can be really tempted to lower your standards just to appease the kids or to match the expectations in the other home. And that's a critical mistake that we've made. And we want to share some of the lessons that we've learned along the way.
We want to save you from stumbling into that.
That's right. So we'll see you back here next week. And until then, that makes episode 19 a wrap.
Until next time.